Shalom, everybody. I think we've come to a time for our faith to go into action. It's time to tell the Jewish community that we're not bystanders. Let me explain. Only 80 years ago, the world was taken by surprise by the evil agenda of Adolf Hitler and the Third Reich. The intensity and frequency of the horrors inflicted upon the European Jews was a shock to many, and it was even hard to believe that such a country as Germany could descend so low in committing evil against fellow humans. The players in World War II can actually be divided into different groups. They can be identified as the perpetrators or collaborators like Nazis or French Vichy government or even fascist Italy. The victims, many minorities like the handicapped or religious sects like Jehovah's Witnesses, and of course the Jews and the Gypsies as well. The rescuers, many of them became righteous among the nations, according to Yad Vashem, and the bystanders, the many who looked the other way and did nothing. Now, with resilience and by the grace of God, the Jewish people regrouped and grew again out of the ashes of Auschwitz, crying out to the world, "Never again," as a testimony to the innocent victims and a commitment to never let it happen again. For a brief period of time, a brief period of respite, the world believed that it would never happen again. But unfortunately, the global events of the last few decades have proven us wrong. Not only have we been proven wrong, but the morphing of racial anti-Semitism into anti-Zionism turned out to be the biggest lie that people are willing to buy. By renaming themselves anti-Israel or anti-Zionist, they believe that they are switching from anti-Semitism to social justice warriors or human rights advocates, thus eliminating any sense of guilt they might have had in the past. The new narrative has grown very deep roots in the Western culture from the seed planted by Yasser Arafat and the PLO and watered by all the foes of Israel, including some within the evangelical world, unfortunately. The wheat keeps growing as it continues being watered and even fertilized by the many. The victims are still the Jewish people, and the perpetrators are all those who hate them in thoughts, words, or deeds. There are still two groups left, the rescuers and the bystanders. As to the rescuers, I strongly believe that they will be what I call the new righteous among the nations. Additionally, I believe that they should look at the prophecy of the goats and the sheep, found in Matthew 25:31 through 46, when Yeshua explains that during the tribulation, those who will become believers will turn out to be rescuers of persecuted Jews. I do believe, however, that at the time of the rapture, all believers will be taken prior to the Great Tribulation, which is also known as the time of Jacob's trouble, which is a euphemism for God's time to bring Israel back and discipline Israel one final time. So there will be those who turn to Yeshua during the tribulation and become believers. Out of these believers, hearts will turn towards the Jewish people, and they will aid in their rescue and protection. This is a very powerful model of love and service that we should all pay attention to today. Actually, we should have started yesterday. It's that important. You've always had those who turn in the innocent for their own benefit, or what they're convinced is their own good. All for selfish reasons, of course. However, the bystanders scare me the most. 80 years ago, Europe was plagued by Nazi anti-Semitism and collaborators like the French Vichy government. Those were the perpetrators that were really transparent about their agenda. They were after the Jews at any cost. What about those who stayed in their apartments and peeked behind the blinders when the Gestapo came to take my grandfather away from his wife and daughter, my mother? Were they scared? Did they feel powerless? Did they feel unconcerned because they were not Jewish? Or they simply could not have cared less? Maybe just didn't care. Maybe it was a combination of some of these reasons or even all of them. Who knows? However, the end result was a very large group of colleagues, neighbors, and even friends, quote unquote friends, who could have helped the Jewish people. Instead, they chose to look the other way and became co-perpetrators. I have said this for a long time. A bystander who does nothing only facilitates the crime of a perpetrator. In other words, doing nothing is still doing something. Now, fast forward to 2021, Israel was at war with Hamas for 11 days. Much of the world watched in horror how the IDF was going after the innocent Palestinians. The Palestinian narrative, and really what I mean by narrative is propaganda, has been pushed through the media and various government agencies around the world with the advent of Arafat. It is now believed as truth. No fact-checking necessary. Those in the media and government want Israel to feel alone and isolated. However, the Jewish people have the undeniable right to exist and to do it in their own ancestral biblical land that predates the Palestinian narrative by several millennia. Seriously. Evangelical Christians have had a history of support for Israel. We have to remember. After all, if you read your Bible correctly, using a grammatical, historical method, and paying attention to the context, it becomes extremely difficult to deny the fact that God has a very special plan for Israel and the Jewish people, whom he calls in Zechariah 2:8, the apple of my eye. You can't deny all of that. Pages after pages of promises and covenants made between God and Israel. And all of them, but one, the Mosaic covenant, were unconditional and eternal. What does this mean? This means that they are still in effect today and that God unconditionally promised certain things to the Jewish people. They are based on God's character and never on Israel or the Jewish people's performance. Thank God for that. That history of support and love for Israel, which was once known as Christian Zionism, is quickly eroding, fading away, especially with the newer generation of young evangelicals, as it drastically declined from 75% support to 33% support since 2018. That's a huge drop. That should scare people. Something needs to be done here. So this leaves us with a large group of Christians who genuinely love Israel and the Jewish people. But allow me to be blunt. Loving Israel does not mean making a trip to the Holy Land, eating hummus and falafels, and praying for the peace of Jerusalem, as we read in Psalm 122:6. Now, don't quote me wrong. Prayer ought to be at the foundation of all we do as modern-day followers of Yeshua the Messiah. But it cannot stop there, especially today. Israel and Hamas are now experiencing a ceasefire, and I truly do not know how long it will hold. I would say at least until some tunnels in Gaza are rebuilt and the Hamas arsenal is somewhat replenished with rockets and missiles ready to be launched again on Israeli civilians. How long? I don't know. The ceasefire is in place in Israel, but there hasn't been a complete ceasefire between Jews and their foes for the last 2,000 years. Anti-Semitism is the conflict of all conflicts against the Jews. It is the longest and deadliest pandemic of all mankind. And right now, it is picking up so much momentum that we've never seen or experienced since the Holocaust. It's becoming very scary. It is global, it is vicious, and it shows no signs of stopping. This being said, I am somewhat encouraged by the various organizations getting involved to expose the lies, teach the truth, and voice their outrage. They help educate people and hopefully call them to action of some sort. Now, a call to action is exactly what I'm praying I can do. I want to reach as many Christians as possible and challenge them to put their faith into action. Let's see Genesis 12:3 come to life, where we read God saying to Abraham, I will bless those who bless you, and him who curses you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Hey friends, if you are learning something in this video, and if this blesses you, consider subscribing, hitting the notification bell, and liking. It makes a big difference. It helps us. Thank you. So I've designed a logo that looks like this. Available on my Facebook page. It reads, I am not a bystander, Genesis 12:3. And my hope is that the people get a hold of it and post it everywhere on the net, as many places as you can on your networks. Some people have already approached me to make signs and t-shirts and hats, and that's great. I love it. What I really want for people to do is to go beyond flooding the net with this image of support. I want people to call Jewish community centers, synagogues, and Jewish organizations and just tell them that they will not be a bystander. Do it now when they need it the most. And say, hello, my name is blank, and I am not a bystander. Let the Jewish community know that you are a Bible-believing Christian and that you have their back. Make yourselves available to help if Jewish property is defaced or destroyed. It is always the right time for prayer. But now we all need to kick it up a notch, because it is time for our faith to be in action. Some people even believe that the war against anti-Semitism has been lost. If it is true, and I certainly hope it is not, we have even more reasons to get involved in the lives of our Jewish friends and become the new righteous among the nations. I am not a bystander. Will you join me in not being a bystander? God bless you.